Hey, what one perspective I have when it comes to people who are involved in politics is that if you're not hearing about them anytime ever, they're probably not doing a whole heck of a lot. And so, if you are hearing about them, whether good or bad, at least it tells you that they're doing something and they're getting under somebody's skin, and that might not always be a bad thing. One of the frequent targets for mainstream media here in the state of Idaho is our Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin. As many of you know, she won a primary and then general election last year, so she's going to be in that office a long time, whether or not certain people in media approve of it or not. And I want to point out she's joining us on the telephone this morning. We're at 43. It's about 7 minutes now after 8 o'clock, almost 7 minutes after 8. Bill Kelly with you until 10 a.m. this morning on Magic Valley this morning. First of all, Governor, welcome back to the program.
Well, good morning, Bill. Thank you so much for welcoming me onto your show.
I was looking over the editorial from your hometown newspaper the other day. A little bit of background, maybe for people who might just be tuning in. Friday was Patriots Day at the state capitol. It happens every year. There's always a group that gathers there. If people think that why do they do it at the Capitol, well, we have a replica of the Liberty Bell there, which tells you how a lot of Idahoans feel about our founding fathers. Patriots Day honoring Lexington Concord and the shot heard around the world. And you led, in a symbolic manner, an oath to the Constitution, and with that, the editors at your hometown newspaper in Idaho Falls, you would have thought that you had started an insurrection.
Yeah, well, I don't know what we should talk about first. The celebration on that day and what happened on Friday in Boise, or the my hometown newspaper and their totally irresponsible reporting. Where
Well, I
should we
was
start?
I was going to say, when it comes to what happened Friday, it seemed to me initially that it would have been considered somewhat of a quiet event. It's done every year, and I find that just because you led an oath, it confuses me. Obviously, I wouldn't think that would be unusual at an event celebrating Patriots Day.
Yeah, well, so the event itself was it was a celebration of Patriots Day, and so for people who don't know what that's all about, it is truly about the beginning of the American Revolution, where the early settlers had been trying to deal with some of the things that the government was trying to, really clamp down on them. They were preventing them from being able to live freely, be prosperous, worship freely the way they saw fit. And on this day, it was the redcoats, the British troops, were coming to actually confiscate their guns from the settlers, and that's the first sign of aggression towards us as citizens, our country, and how the government was trying to seize our guns, our weapons, and take them away from us. So the Patriots that day wouldn't have anything to do with it, and that was the start of the American Revolution. And so that's what the day was all about. We were at the Capitol. This event had been hosted for years and years. I don't know how long, 10, 20 years, by a gentleman named Terry Shepard, and he actually is very sadly right now dying of ALS, and so he wanted to continue the tradition, and he asked my friends, the 3% organization, who is not a militia, they are a group of patriots. They were asked to host this event that day. So I was there. A number of other people were there. There were representatives from the Center for Good Governance. There was a representative from the Health Freedom Foundation, representative from the Northwest Nazarene Liberty Group. So there were a number of us there, and as a measure of symbolism, those who were interested and wanted to walked over to the Liberty tree, which had been planted probably 20 years ago, because now it's a huge tree in the park there in front of the Capitol. So those who wanted to, we went over there and we all issued our oath and our pledge to the Constitution, just as a matter of symbolism. And that's what it was all about. It's my the Post Register, the editorial board, they um, they first of all they really truly need to start getting their facts straight, because what they reported was false, and it was so irresponsible for them to report the way that they did. And it's even worse than just irresponsible. It is literally fear mongering to the public, and that's why is the media doing that, trying to incite that kind of fear amongst the public? That's the question that we should all be asking.
There was a reference, I think that, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't have the editorial in front of me today, but I think the reference was that you are consorting with dangerous people, and by somehow administering an oath that I think they said is taken by the military and law enforcement. I guess that means that's dangerous too. I took it when I worked for the Postal Service, which I don't think most people have too much fear of. You know, all we did was sort mail. But it just, I get the impression that no matter what you do, they're going to take issue with it.
Well, it's true. I mean, I there's absolutely no reporting on anything otherwise that I do. Like, for example, last um, Thursday, participating in the Youth in Government program with the YMCA at our state capitol, where there literally were hundreds of students from all over the state participating in that. And I was active in that. I consulted with the acting lieutenant governor from that group, who was also happened to be a woman. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about how I'm working and collecting a group of very successful, talented entrepreneurs to assemble a new board for furthering technical education and skills training across our state, and working to build Idaho as a skills school, the skills state in the nation. They don't talk about that. They don't talk about how I'm going to be, speaking in front of a group of FFA students this Saturday. There's so many things that. Oh, also today in Boise, stay tuned, because there's going to be an announcement from the governor's office, which is an effort that I'll be helping assist the governor's office. They don't talk about any of those things that are good things that are being done. Instead, just pick and choose. They troll social media, and they find things that they disagree with or question and wonder about, and then they create a false narrative by putting false facts out there. It's so irresponsible.
We wanted to mention, for anyone just tuning in, we're speaking with Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin. We're coming up on 8:14. It's 46. Bill Colley with you this morning on Magic Valley, this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. I think part of this, and I don't know your editorial board in Idaho Falls, but the newspaper is co-owned, I believe, by the same people who own several newspapers here in the state, including Twin Falls. I get the impression that a lot of people are just bitter still because they didn't want you to win. You won the primary, and then you won the general election, and so there were two strikes there immediately. And there's almost a belief these are the same people. I'll put it this way: a lot of these people, a candidate they would support in an election would be someone like Bernie Sanders, who says we should give felons the right to vote, convicted terrorists like Dzhokhar Tsarnaev. On the other hand, you meet with a group of people who stress their patriotism, and they get their noses bent out of shape. I just find it to be a little contradictory, and I think that there's still some bitterness. Would you say that it goes back to last year's election?
Well, possibly. But I really blame all of this more on the mainstream media, which is they are going to do everything they can to distort the truth and the reality for any individual who stands for returning our government back to constitutional government the way that it was originally intended. It just goes against their narrative, and I'm a strong supporter of Trump, and anyone who is a supporter of our president is labeled as a racist and neo-Nazi supporter. It's the same old tired language, but I have so much faith in the people of Idaho, and and God-fearing, constitutional-loving people all across this great country who recognize that what is at stake is these democratic socialists, and I'll call them that because that's who they are, that's what they are. They want to change our country, our great nation, into something that it was never intended to be. And there's a lot of people that are very much against this and believe in restoring our constitutional government to what it was intended to. And we're all going to stand strong together and just keep pushing back against this from the mainstream media.
We've got a caller. Do you want to chat with a couple of callers today?
You bet.
Caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin on KLIX.
Janice, I fear that this is going to be an ongoing problem because you as a woman, a strong woman, an entrepreneur, is everything against what the left believes in. And no matter what you do, as long as you do it with the Constitution in mind, you're going to be attacked. But you need to stand strong. But the question I have is I'm seeing more and more, now that this stuff has been coming out, attacks against the constitutional conservatives by the conservative groups and everybody else. How is this even happening in Idaho? And that's what everybody out there needs to ask themselves. Who have we been electing in our state that is trying to take away our state and turn it into a California?
That's a good question. And I'm going to let the Lieutenant Governor get to that because we have a couple of minutes before the break. But he asks, who is allowing this to turn into California? What's the response?
Well, I think there's a similarity between what we saw happening nationally with President Trump and the establishment and going in there and trying, like I think, Bill, you were the one that told me he's in the sandbox and he's kicking the sand all around. The same thing is happening here in Idaho to an extent. And that's what I see. Those are the things that we're dealing with. But I'll say, yesterday I was in Blaine County Republican Women luncheon, and it was a great turnout. There were people that came. There were people from 5 counties that came to this luncheon yesterday, and so the grassroots people of Idaho they know what's going on. They know what's at risk, and they're staying active and engaged. And that's what truly matters. And that's how I won the election, because I went all across the state, all across the country, the counties, and spoke to these grassroots people all across Idaho. And so I'm seeing the same level of activism and engagement, even now when it's not an election year. And that's what's really important, that we keep up that level of engagement.
Can you stick around for until about 8:30 or so this morning?
Yeah, you bet.
Because we have to get to a commercial break just shortly, and I know there's some additional people who'd like to speak with you today. We've got to take a very short break. It's coming up on 8:47 right now. Our guest is Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin. As usual, always on the she's got her radar up all the time because she has to. The constant mainstream media attacks continue. Bill Cowley with you as well, too, on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're at 47. Probably we'll hit 50 sometime in the next half hour. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin joining us this morning. She's with us for another 8 minutes. We're at 48 on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. It's 8:22. Bill Cowley with you, too, on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX. Lieutenant Governor and I were chatting during the commercial break, and she was pointing out, that there's some reaction from some Republicans and from some people in news media to this situation where apparently don't like the people she sometimes speaks to. And, of course, we should point out those people also pay taxes and vote in the state of Idaho. Governor, I guess that the fact of the matter is we're not surprised when the attacks come in from the other side, from liberals and Democrats, are we?
No, not at all. But it's striking to me how the liberals, especially women who are supposed to be, other women supposed to be supporting women in elected leadership, they they're all about the woman and promoting the women and building the woman up, except for when it comes to a conservative woman. And because of the irresponsible reporting from the mainstream media, where they are calling for, the liberals started calling for my resignation based on something that wasn't even true. And it just strikes me as a woman, when there is a woman that acts assertively and on her own, they criticize that. And then they also wonder, did you go talk to the governor and get permission to do this or say that? Or have you spoken to, the governor and asked for forgiveness? It just strikes me as being so hypocritical that I guess that's the kind of woman that they truly want, is someone who won't act on her own and has to seek permission and acceptance from a man.
We should point out, you ran as a separate candidate from the governor, so you're elected by the people of Idaho, and the governor is not exactly, I think technically he's not your boss.
Oh, my boss are the people of Idaho. That's who I report to. That's who elected me. I am a duly elected constitutional officer. I report to the people of Idaho.
We've got a caller looking to join us. And caller, you're up next. You're on the air with Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin. Go ahead.
Good morning, and keep up the fight. Being a constitutional conservative is like an endangered species, and we need to fight back against all this stuff. But, you talk about the liberal media. I mean, they all go to these journalism schools that are teaching them Marxism, socialism, communism, and then they're owned by big corporations that's their agenda, is to transform this country into a socialist utopia. But keep up the fight. I guess my question is, I've submitted things to the state legislature and yourself about protecting our forests. And the only way we're going to do that easily and could be done is to stop the pine beetles from killing our trees. And when they banned the DDT, that was the force that...
Right. Got about 3 minutes to go here. So
anyway, I'd like to have her comment about that, because our forests are dying, and there's nothing that's going to stop them unless we bring back DDT. Everything else is so expensive. It is very inexpensive, safe. All the things that's been said about DDT, they're saying about you, are just lies. Anyway, I'd like to comment on that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you for your comment. Thanks for your keeping up the good work. Whether it's the beetles or refusing people to go in and collect firewood from our forests and thin the forest, be able to mine the resources from the ground, manage the rangelands. We need to be able, as a state, to be more actively involved in the management of our natural resources. And I do believe that the Idaho Department of Lands director is very favorable towards the idea of the Good Neighbor Authority, and where even counties could petition to do that, working with the agency. So I'm going to be speaking with him during the interim and seeing what we can do to build on that concept, to have greater involvement managing our resources in Idaho.
Got a couple of minutes to go, and of course, I'm going to hold you to this because you mentioned you might be able to do this originally on another day. So we'll have to have you come back sometime in the next month or so and spend a little time with us. But before we wrap up, a couple of minutes to go. People here, you're explaining what really happened here, and they're not getting the whole story through the mainstream media. If they need the truth, where do they need to go find that? How do they get the real facts of what goes on?
So by listening to Bill Colley Radio on 1310 KLIX in Twin Falls.
All right, a $5 check is in the mail.
Well, there are other radio stations around the state as well, and then I think we need to work together as conservatives to develop our own kind of format for getting the message out through social media. This is how the new level of communication is, and reaching out to the masses of people and just bypassing the the mainstream media, which is not interested in telling us the truth.
Well, a lot of these folks who are writing this stuff won't even be in print by the end of this calendar year. That's my gut feeling on that. Now, I don't wish anybody losing a job, but I think a lot of this is because of their own attitude, and they're so dismissive of other ideas, they may have dug their own graves. That's something they have to look at.
It's so unfortunate for the Post-Register because, we have multiple businesses in Idaho Falls, and we no longer advertise with them, and we no longer subscribe to the newspaper. And it's for a business model, it doesn't make sense for the local newspaper to continually attack those who are trying to provide opportunities and build up the community. It makes no sense.
Well, Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin, we want to thank you for your time on very short notice this morning, but we look forward to speaking with you again sometime soon.
Great. I really always love chatting with you, Bill. Thanks. Keep up the good work yourself.
All right. Take care. Lieutenant Governor Janice McGeachin, and of course, she's off to the state capitol today because a big announcement, as she pointed out, is coming up a little later today. She and Governor Brad Little will be unveiling that. In the meantime, short break. It's 47. We're at 8:30. We're going to be joined in just a moment by Sergeant Ken Menzel. Almost called him Lieutenant. I keep wanting to promote him, but I'm not allowed to do that. He's with the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Office. He's on the way shortly.